Hello students, today in this video we will discuss about lesson 2 of our textbook Snapshots titled as The Address, written by Marga Minko. Marga Minko is the pseudonym for Sarah Menko, born on 31st March 1920 in southwest Netherlands. Marga Minko is Dutch journalist and writer. Her actual surname was Manko, but an official accidentally switched the first vowel I to E. As a young girl, Marga, along with her Jewish parents, moved to Breda, a town near her birthplace. As a child, Minko hated her Jewish identity and often wished that she was like other non Jewish children. And why did she desire so? That is expressed through this story. Let's have a brief introduction of the story. The story is set in the backdrop of the World War II in Holland. During World War II, the Germans, the Nazis under Hitler, invaded Holland, where 90% of the people were Jews. Many of the Jews fled in fear to other countries. Thousands were imprisoned in concentration camps. A woman and her little daughter had also to leave their home. This woman is Mrs. S, and her little daughter is the narrator and the protagonist of the story. The woman, the woman left all her things with the woman, and that woman is Mrs. Darling. She is one of the acquaintances of Mrs. S. After some time, the woman died. Mrs. S. She died. However, her daughter, she remembered the place where she used to live with her mother. Long after the war, she came to the town where she used to live with her mother. She went to meet the woman with whom her mother had left all her things. But the woman refused to recognize her because she didn't want to return the things she had taken. Then the narrator gives up the idea of getting them back again and decides to leave all of them behind with her. She resolves to forget that address where those belongings lie in unpleasant surroundings. Actually, she had come to claim those things, but finally decides to leave them there and move forward in life. The author suggests that we must not keep clinging to the past, but should embrace the present and prepare for the future, leaving behind all the bitter memories. So, now let's know about the main characters that we will come across while reading the story. The narrator, most probably she is the author Marga Minko herself. Mrs. S, the narrator's mother. Mrs. Darling, Mrs. S acquaintance, a 15-year-old girl, Mrs. Darling's daughter. Now, let's try to comprehend the story with the help of main points. As I told you, the narrator, she had returned to her native place to see, to feel her mother's belongings that her mother had given to Mrs. Darling for their safety. So, in the beginning of the story, it is narrated how the protagonist was given a cold reception, means she was not welcomed by Mrs. Darling when she went to her native place after the war in search of her mother's belongings. After ringing the bell of house number 46, in Marconi Street, that is the address which was given to her by her mother. When she rang at the door, a woman opened the door. And who was that woman? Mrs. Darling. On being introduced, the woman kept staring. First, that lady kept staring at the narrator in silence. There was no sign of recognition on her face. She pretended as if she didn't know the narrator at all. The woman was wearing her mother's green knitted cardigan. The narrator could understand that she had made no mistake. It means she had knocked at the right door. She asked the woman whether she knew her mother. The woman couldn't deny this. The narrator wanted to talk to her for some time, but the woman cautiously closed the door and expressed her inability to entertain that girl at that time. The narrator stopped there for some time and then left the place. In part 2, we read that when that lady, that woman, Mrs. Darling, denied to recognize her, denied to entertain her, then she decided to go back. And while she was going, then she recalled her past memories. She recalled how that address of 46 Marconi Street was given to her by her mother. So, let's read about this. In the subsequent sections, the memories of the narrator's bygone days come to light. Her mother had provided the address many years ago during the war. She went to home for few days. It means while she was a teenager and she was studying in hostel. So during the holidays, she came to her home for few days. She could, and at that time she could easily find that various things were missing. At that time, her mother told her about Mrs. Darling. She happened to be an old acquaintance of the narrator's mother, and after some time, she had revived contact with her and had been coming there regularly. Every time, whenever she visited their house, whenever she left their house, she took something home with her. She told that she wanted to save all their nice belongings, their nice possessions. The next day, the narrator saw Mrs. Darling going out of their house with a heavy suitcase. She had a fleeting glimpse of Mrs. Darling's face, means she noticed her face for a very short time. She asked her mother whether the woman lived far away. At that time, the narrator's mother told about the address, house number 46, Marconi Street. After many days after the war, the narrator was eager to take record of the possessions that must still be at the number 46 Marconi Street. With this intention, she went to the given address. It means as she wanted to see, wanted to touch, wanted to feel her mother's belongings. That's why she decided to visit Mrs. Darling's house, her address. So, in the concluding part of the story, we will read that the second visit of the narrator, that was a little bit that proved a little bit fruitful to her. As the narrator's first visit, it yielded no result, so she planned to go once again. Interestingly, a girl of 15 opened the door to her. Her mother was not at home. The narrator expressed her wish to wait for her. The girl accompanied her to the passage. The narrator saw an old fashioned iron candle stand hanging next to a mirror. The girl made her sit in the living room and went inside. The narrator was horrified to find herself in a room she knew and didn't know. It means the surroundings in which her mother's belongings were placed, that was new to her, that was weird to her, but those belongings that were very close to the narrator. She found herself in the midst of familiar things which she longed to see again, but which troubled her in the strange atmosphere. It means those things were settled in strange way, in tasteless way, and that thing was troubling the narrator. She had no courage to look around her, but she no longer had desire to possess them. The things for which she came there now have lost their importance when she noticed them in strange atmosphere. That's why she got up, walked to the door, and left the room. She resolved to forget the address and moved on. Theme of the story: Marga Minko's short story, The Address, discusses the pain and sufferings brought by war to the individuals and the challenges they had to face in order to bring resolutions to the situation of crisis. The key idea that the author emphasizes is to portray the disruption, disorder, and the catastrophic impact that war has brought to the life of narrator and her mother. However, the author also comments upon the memories by saying that they lose their value when seen again or detached from the context, and suggests that such painful past must be retrieved, must be recovered, and they need to move on in life. Yet, the central idea that the story discusses is the emotional distortion caused by war. As far as the title of the story is concerned, it is quite appropriate. The title is The Address, and the whole action centers around it. The title is suggestive and occurs at the beginning, middle, and end of the story. The author focuses the reader's attention on it by her self assurance that she had reached the correct address. And the middle part of the story reveals how she came to the address. It was her mother who had informed her about the place where Mrs. Darling lived and asked her to remember it. Finally, the story ends dramatically with the narrator's resolve to forget the address. She had remembered it for so many years, and now, since the belongings of her mother stored there have lost their usefulness, she finds that forgetting this address would be quite easy. For your convenience, difficult words are mentioned over here. So, for the better understanding of the text, just read out these word meanings. So, students, this is all about the story, The Address. Thank you. Thank you so much.